we ready?
Yes, we are live.
All right, then I will call this town council meeting to order. If everybody would join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. First item is the approval of the minutes. We have two to approve. First is the minutes of the Town Council public hearing on November 7th. And do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
Any changes, comments? None? This was just the minutes of the public hearing, so it's pretty straightforward. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, second are the minutes of the Town Council meeting of November 7th of last month. Again, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Second.
All right, any changes, comments? Petra, I just have a few little grammatical typos, but nothing of substance or changes the any of the actual minutes themselves. Anybody else have any changes? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, mayor's update. I just have a couple things really quickly. One is to let everybody know that the permit has been received for the second phase of our sand scraping. If y'all remember, we were doing that in two phases. We did a section of the beach based on the emergency permit that was in effect that allowed us to do areas where there were structures or property that were within 20 feet, or where dune damage occurred within about 20 feet of structures. Then we had gone in for a second permit that gave us greater latitude to do other areas of the island. That was approved about a week and a half ago. The sand scraping is going to commence. We expect the beginning of next week. The equipment should be being brought in this week, Thursday, Friday. Our intent is to try to get all of that scraping done between next week and before the week prior to Christmas, because we realize that Christmas week we're going to have a lot more people on the island, people on the beach. So that's been approved, and it will start up here hopefully next week. And again, as a reminder, that area under that permit will be from mostly it's on the western end of the island for the most part. So it's Eugenia up through Mariner's Watch, and then it's the area in front of the sanctuary, and then down at the other end where you have the area in front of the beach club. So that's been approved, and we're glad to see that permit and work underway. The second thing is just a comment I think most people have seen in the press, that our former administrator and treasurer were arraigned last week, Monday, in federal court, each on one charge or one count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Both our former administrator and our former treasurer entered pleas of not guilty. And I do not believe that any court dates have been, or trial dates have been set. So I think everybody has seen that. I know the Post-Courier, other press have covered it. And we really have nothing else that we know as a town or can add to that. But obviously we'll continue to follow developments in that case. That's it for my comments. Citizens' comments, do we have any comments with respect to the items on our agenda? Wendy.
Wendy Kulik, 38 Marsh Edge Lane, at least for a little while longer. I know that there were 3 applicants for the St. John's Fire Commissioner from Kiowa, and so my question is, when a public vote was held to recommend one candidate over the others to County Council? And then my second question concerns the item for executive session. Is that a different way of talking about Stephanie's performance appraisal for the year?
I'll try to address that as we go into executive session.
Okay.
How's that? Okay. Thanks, Wendy.
You're not going to answer the other question?
I'll let, I think when we get to that item on the agenda, we'll talk about the whole process at the same time.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other citizens' comments? All right. With that, we have no presentations. We'll go to old business. The agenda item is a Town of Kiowa Post-Employment Retirement Health Contribution Proposal. And Stephanie, who is Dorota handling that?
Yes,
There, oh, there you are.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't see you back here.
yes. Well, today the staff is asking the mayor and the council to define a policy on post-employment health benefits. And just to give you like a quick background, currently the town is participating in a state health plan and offers pretty generous package to its active employees. The town retirees are eligible to participate in a state health plan. However, we don't have a policy on how the town contributes, if contributes any in the premium cost for the retiree. So additionally, there is a new accounting standard, GASB 75, that is effective for this fiscal year and will require the town to recognize on its balance sheet unfunded liability related to this benefit, post-employment or retiree, for retirees, medical insurance for retirees. So first of all, for the employee to be eligible to that benefit, they have to meet the requirement for the South Carolina retirement system, which is either 28 years of service with the state agency, age 65, or for the early retirement, it's age 55 with 25 years of service, and or age 60 and 20 years of service for state agency. Then additionally, the state health plan has its requirement. The individual has to work for 5 years prior to be eligible to this retirement, for 5 years for the employer that participate in a state health plan. Meaning it has to be an active full-time employee, meaning if someone is on disability leave, that will not count towards that. Just looking at the nationwide, with the you will see a decreasing cost in that with the increasing cost of health insurance. You will see a decreasing trend in employers offering that kind of benefit. Just looking at the 10 past years, you will see almost 10% decrease. It's also important that you will see that it also varies on the type of employer. And you will have 73% of the state and local agencies offering that benefit compared to only 11 for private and 19 non-for-profit organizations. I also look at the some communities in the neighborhood, our neighboring communities, and you will see that that practice also varies based on pretty much the size of the entity. And you will see, you can, for example, Valley Beach does not offer any share in the cost of the premium, and the retiree is fully responsible for the premium. Well, in Mount Pleasant, you will see 95% is paid by the town of Mount Pleasant for the employees or retirees with over 20 years of service. So today we are asking that you'll consider to approve a policy that will fund up to 50% of the premium for the retiree up to age 65, and the percentage will be based on years of service with the town. So for the retirees, for the individuals that work less than 5 years, the town will not participate in the premium. So the retiree will cover 100% of the premium. From 6 to 10 years, the employer will pay 15%, and for 11 to 20 years, the employer will pay 30%, and over 20 years, the town will pay 50%. Also, I think it's good to note that I think we come up with this recommendation and it's reasonable, and like I mentioned, it's reflects the increasing cost of the health insurance. And just want to give you an idea, for this year, the annual premium for the retiree is almost $6,000. For the family, it's $15,000, and for the dependent, it's $12,000, about a little over $12,000. And also, based on the current census of the town, 3 employees will not be eligible for the benefit, but within the next 5 years, we'll have 1. And that employee will fall in his first category, 15%. She'll be 6-10 years with the town. We have 5 employees that will meet the minimum. Well, it doesn't mean that they're gonna retire, but they will meet the minimum requirement. And 1 from 10 to 15 years. So
Okay, and I think,
that's,
Gerard, if I can't, I want to stress that, because I had asked you to put these last numbers together to stress for, or clarify for the other council members that those numbers are not, all that is, that's worst case. That would be the potential, for example, 5 to 10 years. This does not mean that we'll have 5 employees who will be actually getting this benefit. It would only mean that there are 5 people who are eligible. If they chose
Yes.
to retire early, they would get it.
That's
But
correct.
if they retire, if they continue to work up to age 65, they would never benefit from this at all. So
that's correct.
This
This
is
is
an
the minimum
outside
required,
case.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I requested valuation of that liability that will show on our balance sheet. But because we have changed our how we want to fund it, and until it's approved, I don't want to request another scenario, only because it costs $500. So once we know what's approved, I will ask for that. But it's going to be probably, if you approve the one we're proposing now, it's going to be probably less than 190 to 100,000, which is
How much? What did you say?
less than 190.
About
One.
190.
And also, just please remember, this is a balance sheet item. It's not a income statement, so it will reduce the fund balance. But it's like a retirement liability.
It's not an actual cash cost.
It's not a cash outflow.
Not today.
No, it's a reduction. Yes, that's correct.
At some point it is.
It could.
Well,
Could be, might
Well,
never be.
yeah,
Might never
at some
be.
Yeah,
point it is.
but because the cost of the premiums for active employees pretty much increases every year to fund that liability. So it will not be that in 10 years we're gonna pay $190,000 to the state. It's just gonna carry item on the balance sheet.
All right, well, in order to have a discussion of this, we first need to have a motion. So do I have anybody who would like to make a motion to adopt the town retiree medical cost sharing policy as recommended in this memorandum?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay, well, with that, I will then open it up to discussion by council.
Well, one thing that I assume is kind of implicit in this, but would be important, is that nobody would be eligible for this subsidy unless they retired in good standing with the town. That is, they left the town's employee in good standing. No, unpaid debts to the town, no performance issues or anything like that. I think that's important. We don't necessarily want to subsidize, not that none of the current employees would be relevant necessarily, but we don't want to necessarily subsidize people that might have left under circumstances similar to what we've just seen fairly recently.
I can address that. No, that's not part of this. That's not implied. So it is like our current policy with regards to accrual vacation. if you leave, other than being fired, our current employment policy does state that if for instance, if you're fired, you're not, but if you leave, and we don't have anything to stipulate if you owe the town money, you don't get your benefits, so you still are entitled to those benefits. So this particular policy is not written in, it's not implied that if you know, I don't know what good standing, but some of the scenarios that you just suggested, it's not written to prohibit them if they have the years with the state, because of course with the state, they'll still be eligible. But there's nothing in here that states that the town, if they meet the requirements that's listed under this scenario, they would get the percentage from the town.
But do we have
I think that should change.
to John's point, I mean, maybe I asked Dwayne, you might have to research it, but do we have the ability to make that kind of distinction?
Excuse me.
Can't hear you.
I mean, it's our policy.
Right.
Yeah, my understanding is there would have to be a prior understanding to the extent that this is contractual. If someone on the front end understood that there were instances of misconduct that might affect them in one way or the other, and they explicitly agreed to that on the front end, that's something I think that may be doable. If they have a vested interest in a retirement benefit, and there was nothing on the front end that said, if you do X, Y, and Z, we could take it away, I think we would be exposing ourselves to liability to withhold benefits that they were otherwise entitled and that would be vested.
Wayne, are you saying that if we pass this policy, it's contractual? I
No,
thought we could
no.
change it pretty much whenever we wanted.
No, my understanding of the way that misconduct, if someone has an understanding on the front end
Okay.
that they have that requires the consent of the person signing on to the policy. It's my understanding.
So as long as the policy is clear,
Correct.
that the
Okay.
town contribution has these qualifications around it,
Correct.
then we're okay.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that could potentially be incorporated as
Right,
part
it
of
could
the
be
policy.
incorporated, it's just not, it's not presented, the way it's presented now, it's not incorporated.
Correct.
That's what I'm saying, that's
Mhm.
correct.
I think we should incorporate it.
Well, that would be a vote, you guys
Okay.
have to tell us.
We will vote on it, but
I'm okay, just have to.
I've got just a
decide on it.
process question. Assuming we do have an employee that is able to avail themselves of this benefit, are we paying the money to them, or are we paying the money to the South Carolina
To the state,
medical?
to this health, to the plan. We're not
Okay.
paying to them.
Is-
Additionally, we paying the full premium and we bill them.
we built the
It's-
employee, the ex-employee?
That's correct. That's correct. Or we have, there is one retiree currently that is actually taking advantage of that benefit. And what we do, we set up like a plan with, not a plan, but we invoice him like 10 days before, so we don't come up with money. He pays, and then we pay the full amount. But then the state will
Dorota, for
not-
clarification, for the state though, that's the process of the state.
That's correct.
It's not
That's
something that we're doing
ours.
differently.
Yeah,
The
we can't
state
do
does
that.
that with all
It has to
retirees.
be
They-
like
the-
that.
The towns or cities pay, and then and then there's reimbursed back from them.
But I
It'll be
also-
the same as
Retired.
Cobra then.
I've also,
Well, some in terms of paying, but
It'll be
we're,
the same as Cobra, if you have an
kind
employee
of,
that.
yes,
Yeah,
that's correct.
kind of
Yeah, that's
same
correct.
Well,
like
we had
Cobra.
Cobra and we paid directly.
yeah.
Well,
I
but
mean,
the
it would-
state,
it would
but the
make-
state Cobra,
it would-
the town is billed for the full amount, and then we had just Kathy left, and she
That's how
paid
Cuba
us,
does it. The
she sent
state
us a
does it.
check, we
Okay.
billed her.
That's because it's people.
And I
Yeah.
also
Okay.
talked to the state and asked them, what if we can't recover the money? Can we drop this person? The town will drop the person, and we can do that. We can. The person moves somewhere and we can get the money back. So we can drop them from the plan.
How do we have a person on the plan now without a policy in place?
Because it wasn't formalized policy, however, we did have a retiree that took advantage of that benefit.
I mean, it was a separate negotiation, right? There was
Yes,
no-
that was
Correct.
something different.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
been for,
It was just a separate negotiation,
Yes.
and we didn't have a policy, and that was one of the recommendations of our audit, so that's why we're coming to you all.
Would this be considered as income to the employee then?
no.
It's not?
It's
the same thing
under
as you
under
have
tax
on-
law, it's the same as any
That's
other
correct.
employee benefit. It's a,
That's what you have with the active employees. It's gonna be the same thing.
Okay. all right.
Well, it will come to no surprise that I object. I think it's a nice opportunity for the staff, and I love the staff. But those of us on this dais were put here by the residents, and I don't see where putting a long-term liability on our balance sheet is in the best interest of the residents of the town. And it's likely to come at a time when we're looking at some headwinds with our revenue stream, and we'll continue to add to our cost. In the last year, we've had a lot of cost based on this building. So we're gonna add another, I know it's a balance sheet item, $190,000. I don't think it's gonna be that much in terms of,
Yeah,
I
don't
understand,
think so.
but it's still gonna be money outside of our pocket. And at some point, there's gonna be 5 people sitting on this dais who have an issue. They're gonna have to clean up after a storm. They're gonna have to fix the Kiowa Bridge. They're gonna have to repave the parkway. And our cost structure is getting out of whack. And I'm sorry, I just don't think it's the right thing to do to spend all this money for a group of folks, I love you guys, with other people's money. And that's what we're spending. We're spending other people's money. And so I strongly object to it. I know I will lose, as I've lost a couple of these. But I would ask that people start looking at this as to what are we doing to ourselves in the long run? Because I think it's damaging.
Well, all I was going to say is I've struggled with this, and this is at least the third iteration of this that we've looked at, trying to, we've reduced the employer's share. We've looked at the number of years. Initially, we looked at it, and the years required of service were not all town, and that's what we made it. Now it's a requirement that you have to be an employee of the town for more than 20 years and not just an employee of the state or another municipality. But I guess, I have to agree with Chris. And what we have done, at least in the past year, is we look at every increase as a separate item. I mean, we've looked at the 401k, we've looked at the health insurance supplement, we've discussed tuition reimbursement, but we never look at it as a total. And I think going forward after this, the only way I can really look at this and make these types of requests and make a decision is if we have a summary page that always shows us all the benefits that we, our employees are getting, so that I can look at it in total and make a decision. Or we spend one council session in which we put all the requests in at one time, and then we can look at it and say, what are we approving? How much is this increasing for the year? How much is it increasing long-term? But the way we get it piecemeal like this, I think it's difficult to really analyze what we're doing and if we're doing the right thing. And I have some of the same concerns Chris has.
Diana and Chris, I share your concerns, but I think we have, regardless of what we end up with, we have to have a policy. I mean,
We do.
when you look at how the town was run in the past, where policies were kind of made up on the fly, very often town council didn't even know about it, as in this case. That simply has to stop. This has to be a written policy understood by everybody, regardless of the exact specifics of it. Even if the specific is there is none,
Right.
it has to be here,
I agree.
rather than just
Right.
kind of randomly.
Well, actually, it's a
Yeah.
requirement this
Yeah,
year.
I agree.
We
We
have
have
to
to
have a
policy.
written policy this year
It
from an
should've-
audit
it should've happened
standpoint.
before,
Right,
which
from an
is,
audit
you know,
standpoint.
I would
Right.
support a policy that is reflective of what Folly Beach does and the other 4 towns that have decided not to do what we're being asked to do. The 3 towns listed, all are much bigger than Kiowa. 2 of them are way bigger. Georgetown's a little bit bigger. And at some point, I just think public officials should stand up and say no.
I've got one. Assuming that something like this is approved, what happens to the agreement that the former employee has? Will he be
Yeah.
advised and will have to be put under this,
Absolutely.
or what?
Yes, the policy is for everyone, every retiree from the town.
Well,
There was
I-
no formal policy.
I don't know what the answer, Jack,
You've got a contract.
is to that, because nobody on this council was a party to that agreement. And I think we'll need to have, and so I don't know what that agreement entails. And therefore, I think at some point, Dwayne, regardless of where we come down on this, Dwayne is at some point gonna have to
Okay.
advise the council on what liability or we have to that individual. Chris, let me also throw in my 2 cents to this. And look, I don't disagree with you at all with regard to cost, although I would argue that if we were going to, and we should, have made some big impact on cost, it could have started in a lot of different places than the retiree medical.
I lost the subsidy argument too,
yeah.
so I've tried.
But I want to be clear what this doesn't do. The one thing it does not do is provide retiree medical as an ongoing, open-ended contribution forever. So this recommendation that staff's making is only up to the age of 65. So it is not providing retiree medical unending until somebody's 50, 90, 100, or whatever. So there is in fact a fixed end to what the liability is. It's not completely open-ended. And it is based on the idea that once a person is 65, they've got Social Security, other things that they ought to be focused on, and the town is not stepping into that obligation. At the same time, I think what one of the things that the town wanted to accomplish with this is to ensure that as we are looking at our workforce, trying to ensure that we have the best employees, that we're able to make movements of people, that we don't have some things like retirement benefits and other plans that are restrictions to us being able to have mobility in our workforce. And one of the things you have right now with retiree medical and with the cost is that you do get into a situation where you have employees who are 62, 63, 64, who maybe for whatever reasons would like to retire, and because of things like retiree medical care, they don't have the option to do that. And so this provides the town with some additional flexibility in terms of its staffing and moving people in and out of the organization at a pretty low cost. I mean, the cost of this relative to if we had total retiree medical forever is pretty small. So there is, I think, some benefit to the town. It's not just a giveaway to employees, but I think there's a benefit to the town in terms of the flexibility it gives us on managing our workforce and moving people in and out of the organization. But I can't argue. I mean, it is a cost, not a significant one, but it's a cost.
Yeah, I've heard the argument that we need this to attract the best and the brightest. Of course, we've already attracted the best and the brightest. We have a pretty good staff. We did so without this type of a policy. So I'm not sure I buy that. I just, everyone can agree with my arguments, and then we'll all vote against it, or against my arguments. But I don't know how you argue one way and then vote it different. And that's what we're doing. We're saying we have to control cost. We're about to vote 4-1 to let the cost go up.
Well, I don't know that we are.
Well, I think so, based on what I knew walking into this meeting.
We'll find out pretty quickly.
Well, at least we're voting, which is better than it has been, so.
Okay. Other comments?
Well, again, I just want to reiterate, I think we ought to be doing this at one council meeting, looking at all of the requests that are going to come out in a year, whether it's 401k or whatever, so that we can look at them all together and understand the total cost. But we just do it piecemeal, and I think that makes it more difficult to.
Well,
to
the
run
only
in.
hard thing with this is potentially, we don't know, like 401k, like other benefits for the active employees, I can summarize the cost. This, I don't know, maybe within 5 years, this person will not retire and will have zero cost. So it's kind of hard, unless I can make a list of benefits, what the town offers, but to put a number at that, we can't.
It's not necessarily a number.
So just
It's
a list
it's
of
a
what the
listing
town,
of
yeah,
what all the
sure,
benefits are.
absolutely.
And,
I can-
it wouldn't necessarily
Yeah.
have
But I
to,
don't think we have anything else we're changing.
not right now, but we've done the 401k earlier this year, and we did the supplement a few months ago, and we've talked about tuition reimbursement. We do it piecemeal. We talk about these benefits piecemeal.
But we haven't added any of those benefits. All
We
of those
increased the
benefits.
401k.
In a
We
budget,
increased it.
during the budget process, we did look at those benefits, and it wasn't maybe piece by piece, but it was probably just one ways and means, but all the benefits were discussed. We knew the increase in medical premiums. We increased 401k. Actually, the retirement went up, everything went up,
Mhm.
yes. But that's for active employees.
Right.
Okay. All right, so with that, we will call this to a vote.
Well, are we
but do
going-
we
are we
want,
going to
Yeah,
you've
can
made,
we-
you've made the motion, do you wanna make a adjustment to the motion?
Yeah, I would move that we modify the motion to approving this policy with the additional requirement that the employee should be in good standing at the time of their separation. And we can, I don't know if we need to, in the policy, define good standing, but I would certainly put it under no disciplinary actions, under no suspension, and frankly, I know Stephanie isn't crazy about this, not owing the town any money.
Okay. And Stephanie, point of order, I need a second to that. Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
I second.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, may I also make one other suggestion? The wording is, under years of service with the town, you've got gaps. You've got less than 5 years, and then the next one is 6 to 10. But if
There
you
is
have
a gap
5
there,
years
yeah.
and 2 months. And also on the 6 to 10 years of service, you have 15 and 80, that's 95%. One of those two numbers has to change.
Okay, and those can be cleaned up.
They can.
All right. So with those changes, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No,
Okay, motion passes.
it was 4 to 1, right?
Okay, Chris.
I said aye.
I honestly didn't know what it was going to be. I really did not know.
last meeting.
I'm sorry.
Amended?
Is that vote on the amendment to the motion?
That was on the,
Or the original motion?
that was on the amended
Amendment.
motion. We amended the original motion.
Good standing.
Then you have to vote on the original first policy.
Stephanie, you want to advise us on how we need to vote on this?
Okay, Petra, who made the motion to amend?
I did.
John
John did.
Who
John did.
seconded that?
Mr. Bowden?
And then was there a vote to amend, to approve the amended motion?
Yes,
Okay,
but now you've
then-
got to.
right, so now
Oh,
you have
okay, now
to
we
vote.
approve the
You had a
amendment.
motion and you had a first, you had a motion and a second to amend, but you didn't have a vote to approve that, and then you need to then make the, right, right,
So now we have to have a vote to approve the amended motion?
right,
Yes.
that's correct.
Okay.
Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No,
Okay, thank
Nobody
you.
changed their vote.
I am.
All right. I appreciate the conversation. And let's move on to new business. I'm sorry, consent agenda. We have the ordinance of 2017-23, which is to rezone the property located at 1 Kiowa Beach Drive from the commercial zoning district to RST2 resort zoning district. This is a second reading. It was approved. This has been approved by or recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. It has had a public hearing and approved on first reading. So do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Then I'll move to new business. We need to review and approve the 2018 meeting schedule. I trust everybody's had a chance to look at it. We, like all years, have needed to, in a few cases, change some of the meeting dates just to work around holidays and what have you. So I would ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All of those dates look okay? Anything we missed?
I got a couple of vacations, but none of them miss a date.
Do you want us to try to accommodate that? No. All right.
You asked me.
All in favor of approving the 2018 meeting schedule?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's approved. Public Works Committee appointment. John, you're handling that?
Yeah, Will Connor, who is Kika's Director of Major Repairs. It was originally the intent to have him on the committee, but he was missed when the committee was first approved. So this is really a follow-up to make him an official member of the committee as opposed to someone who just occasionally shows up at meetings. And he'd, of course, be a good add, given his background. So I just need a
You want to go ahead and
motion.
make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we add Will Connor to the Public Works Committee.
I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And Chris, recommendation for St. John's Fire District Commissioner?
Yeah, and Wendy, I'll try to answer your question in this explanation. We put out a notice that there was an opening on the Fire Commission. We had 3 applicants. All 3 were qualified. They were actually referred to and talked to by John Connolly at the Fire Commission, who's the chair of that Fire Commission. And I believe that the paperwork of those individuals was reviewed by other folks on the commission. I know that the chief saw them. And we really went through John's recommendation as to how they wanted to pursue those 3 individuals. To be fair, he'd have been comfortable with any of them. All 3 were qualified. All 3 would have added something. The individual he's recommending and that I'm recommending today to council has the added benefit of extensive IT experience, which is what the board is wholly lacking in today. They're really looking for some help in that area. So the individual, Steve Rolando, who has that type of experience with IBM, is of great interest to the board. So that's why that individual was recommended to us and why I'm recommending him to the council. So with that, I would make a motion to approve Steve Rolando as a recommendation, as I understand, to the county council who has final voice.
Who has the final person?
Yeah.
All right,
A second.
all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
And I guess I'd like to add too, that all three of these candidates are outstanding candidates. In the conversations that I've had, both with the fire district and with the public safety committee and with Chris, all 3 are eminently qualified. They would have been great candidates. And so I think at the end of the day, the county council has been good enough the last several years to be interested in what the town's thoughts were on the candidates. And so we've always taken the opportunity to offer our thoughts. And in talking with the fire district and looking at the current makeup of their commissioners and the skill sets they have, this individual seemed to be, the marginally better candidate, but only because all of them were very good and this person had a few extra skills. So.
And I reached out to both of the other candidates yesterday, one I met with and one I spoke with over the phone, and explained the situation. And there may be another opening next year. That's certainly what we're being led to believe, and have encouraged them both to apply again.
All right.
I've known Steve. Steve's a neighbor. I've known him for a couple of years, and he's a very, very solid guy. I think, and it wasn't in his application, but I think he actually did a stint on the New York State Police Department. He was a state trooper way back when. So
He was a volunteer fighter too, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
he
me.
So, all right. No other business. Town administrator report? Yes, we did.
Yeah, we voted.
We did.
Didn't we already vote?
Trust me, we did.
The only update that I had is that I wanted to formally introduce the new town administrator of Seabrook. He is sitting here in the audience. Stand up, Joe. His name is Joe Cronin. We actually went to school together. And so I am happy to have a fellow person I went to school with right next door to me. So welcome, Joe. I think you've been with the town now for a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks? Yeah. So welcome, and if you need anything, we're just right on the other side of the roundabout. And thank you. So, Joe, the new town administrator of Seabrook.
Do you have any stories?
Thank you. That's it, Mayor.
Nothing else?
No, nothing.
Okay. Council members, I'll start down with Jack.
Only one comment. I think I mentioned in October that we have a vacancy to fill on the BZA. And I think, Stephanie, you sent something out. So far, we've had one interested candidate. Are you going to resend?
Actually, it went out in Wednesday's e-blast. We did a reminder that we still have an opening.
Okay. That's it.
Okay, Chris?
I have nothing.
John?
I mentioned at the last council meeting that I'd be attending the CHATS meeting, which is the Charleston Area Transportation Study Committee, and hoped to get more clarification on 526. Unfortunately, did not. It is mentioned or was mentioned on the list of priorities, but no further information is forthcoming. There has been some talk in the paper about using some of the sales tax money for 526. I think that's somewhere between possible and likely. But beyond that, not really certain what's going on. The flyover at 17, which is a very expensive project, as well as the widening of Main Road, do seem to be live issues. The interesting thing is completion of 526, at least as far as Johns Island, would obviate a lot of the need for the flyover, because the models show that it pulls a great deal of traffic off of that Main and 17 intersection and funnels it into 526. Of course, that creates other problems where it ends up in 520, where 526 would end up on Johns Island. But I think the flyover is so politically well supported that is likely to happen. The bad news is it won't happen for a long time, because the permitting process and the environmental review and all the other things that go along with making any major road change will slow it up for a number of years. But that looks pretty likely. That's all I have.
Diana?
As many of you know, we sent out an Arts Council survey, and we received 552 responses. Is that right, Marilyn? 552 responses, which
More people than vote.
we were actually very happy with it. We're going to include a summary in the town notes, but when Stephanie gets back, we'll make sure that we get that on the town website, the entire questionnaire and answers. And we got a lot of good information. There was a lot of praise of the Arts Council, but we also got a lot of suggestions for future type of programming and, other suggestions that we can use. Our College of Charleston Magical Dinner was sold out at 136 seats. We had that on Sunday, and it was an excellent program. It's the first time I'd ever been to one of those types of dinners. Our last concert of 2017 is Burning River Brass on Monday, 12/18 at Holy Spirit Catholic Church at 7:30. The only thing I have from an environmental is the Coastal Science Beach Erosion annual report should be issued in February.
Okay, thanks very much. With that, I'll turn to citizens' comments.
Scott Nelson, 65 Persimmon Court. I have a really minor issue, but I'd like it to be read into the public record. And since the town is proceeding to repair a lot of the storm damage that happened, I'd ask that the signage down at the spit be replaced so that I'm down there regularly as a volunteer with the town's project on the dolphins and the strand feeding monitoring. And every single time I go down there are dogs on the beach, dogs running in the water. I've seen harassment by owners and their dogs, and they express a general lack of awareness of those restrictions. One of the signs down in that area was washed away during Irma.
It's a sign, the sign you're concerned about, is it the off-leash, or is it the one
It's
that
the
restrict, or is
off-leash.
it the restricted one that restricts any dogs at the far end?
It's a restricted one.
The restricted one, Okay.
It says no dogs in the Audubon,
Right.
shorebird sanctuary area. I've mentioned it to the administration. To my knowledge, nothing's happened, so I just wanted to have it read into the record, and also, to request that the beach patrol be a little bit more active, down in that area. To my knowledge, it's, a state law that, you're not allowed to, be in the inlet, except for fishing and crabbing activities. I believe there's an ordinance against swimming, but, we get Seabrook residents swimming across, and we tell them they can't swim back, and they say, well, go ahead and stop me. So I think there's, this time of year when, there's not much activity, we can put things in place so that when the crowds come back, we can, do a better job down there.
Do you ever see beach patrol down there at low tide? I mean,
Um,
do they seem to be coming down around low tide?
I have
Which is when
seen
they'd be
them during
feeding?
the summer come down, but not, after Labor Day.
okay, we'll follow up.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Virginia?
Hi, Virginia Abbott, 4304C Forest Drive. I just wanted to ask a few more questions about this healthcare. I have some concerns as well. Is there a limit to the age at which one can retire?
Up to 65.
Up?
That's
The
actually,
payment is up till 65. When can a person say, I'm out of here and I'm retiring?
Yeah, there are requirements that the South Carolina retirement puts in place. So you have to be the 65.
Yeah, the rules are in the packet. The rules are in today's packet.
here,
They're here?
On the first page,
where it says retirement status.
under analysis, on the first page under analysis, it's broken out.
So it's,
Oh, so you have to be at least 55
well, you have to,
Retirement.
with 55 with 25 years of service or
That's for
20 years.
every, yes, yes, ma'am.
here,
Okay.
let me
So age
read them
55
exact.
is
So
at least-
you have to have 28 years of service,
Yeah,
or
and you
age
have to be age
65,
55.
or a combination of 55 with 25 years, 60 with 20 years. So
Right.
there's multiple ways in which you,
Right.
combinations of years in service.
As one
And those
who's-
are, those are state of South Carolina driven
Requirements, okay,
requirements.
so
They're
at
not
least we
driven by
have a
the-
limit, somebody can't say at 45, I'm
No.
out of here.
No, they have
Well,
to
they
be
can.
eligible under the
They
state
can.
plan.
But
They can, they just have to buy up their years through the state. There's a cost factor, but someone could say through the state that they want to retire at 40, but then they have to go and look at their number of years, and it could cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy up their years to the state.
So there's not really a limit to when they can retire. All right, well, whatever. Anyway, I am concerned about that cost as well. And as someone who's in favor of universal health care, let's hope they figure it out.
Wendy Kulik, 38 Marsh Edge Lane. I want to second Scott's comments, although the people I've seen out near the spit who are letting their dogs run amok, I've seen less ignorance than disdain. Yeah, they know it's the rule, but they don't really care, and they figure nobody's going to stop them. I mean, there was even one time when I was out there, there was a boat that had come in Riverside, and the dog was out in the, two dogs were out in the river swimming, disturbing the dolphins. And I called the town, but beach patrol was at the other end of the island. And even if they'd gotten there, you know, the other people might have been gone. But I think anything that can be done to spread the word would definitely be beneficial. I have a comment that I want to read on behalf of Diane Leader, 306 Palm World, because she couldn't be here today. And it has to do with the article that was in the Post and Courier, I think November 18th, referencing the Miss South Carolina USA pageant and Miss Kiowa. And so Diane was surprised that something as big as selecting Miss Kiowa Island didn't appear to receive any on-island publicity. Was the town involved in the selection of Miss Kiowa? If so, when was this publicly discussed? And if not, who was involved? Did the contestant need the town's permission, and did the town give it? And I'm happy to give you a copy of the article if anybody isn't aware of it.
Did they have a picture of Miss Kiowa?
I mean, they did not, but her name,
Was she a dolphin?
her name is Bailey Rogers.
Glad it wasn't Jimmy Bailey.
I don't know,
Is
Jimmy
that
in
a
a
woman?
gown might be an interesting concept.
Wendy, I confess, this is the first I've ever heard of this. In fact, I'd like a copy of it.
I'll give it to you on my way
I
back.
haven't the foggiest idea what that is.
Okay.
Yeah. Did anyone else say it?
No, I've never heard of it. And I don't know Bailey Rogers either.
You know, I don't know if she's a child, a grandchild.
I didn't even know there was such a competition.
It's part of the USA pageant. It's a lead-in.
Yeah, yeah. I just didn't know Kiowa had ever participated. Okay.
Well, we're not funding it, let's put it that way.
Well, I think our surprise answered your question.
I think
Okay.
so. My first comment has to do with the discontinuation of the town exchange, and I read the reasons that the town has for doing it. I just would ask you if there's any way to reconsider, because I think anything that lessens the possibility of two-way communication, or the town to directly hear from property owners and property owners to be able to communicate with each other. I think more is always better than less. So I would just ask that perhaps that's something that might be considered. My second question, I'm not sure my memory serves me correctly, but I seem to remember that in the past, when I've asked about the town looking to recoup under a civil suit funds that were allegedly embezzled by the former town administrator and the former town treasurer, I think what I've heard is we're waiting to see what comes out and any charges which may or may not be filed. So my question is, now that the U.S. Attorney has filed charges, does the town have any plans to pursue a civil suit to recoup monies that were not covered by any insurance that the town has, to make at least some attempt to make the town whole after what was taken from it?
I'll take a stab at that, and I'll certainly invite our town attorney to add in. At this point, Wendy, I don't think our answer to that is any different than it has been in the past, which is we're waiting to allow the legal process to carry its way through, because while to my understanding, both of the individuals have pled not guilty, they have not yet gone to trial, and there is certainly the opportunity. I have no insight, no knowledge of what discussions may be taking place, but there are certainly opportunities between now and any court date that various kinds of plea agreements could be reached, which could include some sort of restitution back to the town. Again, I have no idea. We have circled on the calendar the date by which we have to take or make some decision about filing a civil action to try to recover funds.
What is that date, Craig?
It's on Dwayne's calendar, not mine. So
Some March, some.
it's in May. It's a May. We sat down and calculated it, and I
May
think
of
it's
2018?
yes, this coming May. Yes, I believe it's May, but we did make sure we agreed on what the date is.
Is 3 years the statute?
Yeah, and so we have the date. We're still allowing the process to carry out. We know that we potentially have options such as filing a civil action against the two employees, We may or may not have actions against other entities, such as our past
Auditor.
auditing firm. We're holding all of those options in abeyance until we let these proceedings take place. Dwayne, would you answer that differently or add anything?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to it is that the town is precluded from any sort of double recovery. So if there was, say, full restitution required by the
With the-
court, correct, by federal court order, that obviously would supersede any civil action and would be much more recoverable. So we would be well served to wait to see what the judge would require of the defendants in that instance before seeking any extra state court remedy. And obviously, the threat of criminal sanctions and whatever penalties come from the federal court would be greater than what we could do through civil. So we certainly want to see what that number is first before we take any action.
And the only I think additional thing I would add is that I wouldn't want there to be any question, but that we absolutely would like to at some point receive full restitution for the losses that the town had.
The only other comment that I have, and this is for John with the chats work that you're doing on Johns Island roads and things, and I said this when the town had its little transportation mini workshop. There are, as we all know, there is almost no public transportation on Johns Island. What public transportation there is goes from nowhere to nowhere between midnight and 12:15. And I'm aware through some of the volunteer work that I do of a number of people who live on Johns Island who just don't have access. And so anything that you can do through your interaction with the governmental agencies to get them to take a look at it. One particular couple I know who lives off Brownswood Road, who are elderly, each has a health issue. There's a bus stop somewhere on Brownswood or on Main, but they would have to walk like a mile and a half, to get to that bus stop, which just isn't doable for them. And there are a lot of other people like that. So anything that you can do to facilitate more. I know right now, Chats isn't looking at anything, but anything that you can do, I think would be greatly appreciated by our neighbors on Johns Island.
Yeah, I think, just to speak to that, under some circumstances, there's a service called Teleride, which would, if somebody's elderly, infirm, whatever, they could well be eligible for. Chats itself, they look very carefully at ridership and potential ridership, and that's how they kind of determine their routing. It's difficult to get them to do something where they don't see any ridership. I know the resort is, you've talked with Chats, I believe, Roger, regarding Carta, I'm sorry.
Well, and I know, the Link service, the little minivans that we see going, but all those things are related to income. And if you're above absolute minimum, there's nothing.
Yeah,
And there are no community service organizations in the county who provide any sort of transportation either, because I've looked into that too, but thank you.
All right, any other citizens' comments? The only other addition I want to add to the comment about the signage and the dogs at the end of the beach. We do know, we lost a lot of signage in the storm, and so we do know that we've got a lot of issues right now with respect to replacement. Rusty and other staff members have been working to inventory and replace all of the signage that we lost. One of the, and this is not making excuses, one of the challenges we also have is that the ARB takes the view that they have to approve each and every piece of signage that we have on the beach, and so we have had some differences of opinion at the far end of the beach about some of our signage, what we can or can't say. It's not an excuse, but we are trying to work through and eventually get all of this replaced. And we have asked the Beach Patrol to not improve, because they do work hard at it, but to be more vigilant and less, more vigilant on some of the dog issues. So I appreciate your comments, and we're working on it.
Just to add to that, the fact that they really just don't care.
I know,
And what I see is, I've actually had people say, oh, I see the beach patrol coming, and they immediately release their dog during the seasons when they have to be released. They know the beach patrol will catch them, and they don't care. They
No.
just watch for the beach patrol.
I know,
It's very sad.
it is. All right, with that, we will move to executive session. The executive session, I am town administrator leadership assessment discussion to just describe what that is. It is not a personnel assessment of the town administrator. Or at least by council, being that our town administrator is, now 2 years into her role, and we've had over the last couple of years a number of other changes in terms of staff's assignments and our organization, what have you. One of the things that Stephanie and I had talked about some months ago is that it would be good and useful, and she might find it useful as part of building her team, to get some upward assessment from her staff and from her management team as to both her management style, her interactions with the team, something which in the private sector I think you more and more routinely are seeing, but in the public sector is not really the norm. So with that, we made the use of a external resource who's worked with Kika and the town in the past, and that I have a lot of confidence in, Joan Houston, to spend some time with Stephanie's staff, get some input from them about how they saw things going, what they saw as some of the important issues affecting the town, and their Stephanie and her management style. And essentially, she's been getting an upward feedback. This is an opportunity that she's taking to give the town council members an opportunity to hear from her the feedback that she's gotten, and what some of her thoughts and plans are as a result of that. So that's what that session is. It's the first chance for this group to hear that. So I can assure you that there will be no votes taken, and there will be no decisions made, and so there.
That would bind the town.
That would bind the town, right? So, but that's what we will be doing.
And was Jones' contract a sole source contract, or was it put out to bid?
It was a sole source contract, which under our ordinances because of the nature of the relationship, we were able to do. Yeah. So with that, we will. Do I need a vote to go into?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We will convene in executive session. Thank you, everyone.
I actually, this one, these is cuts, this is it.
Good weather.
So, but the zoning changes haven't, so.
A lot of art supplies in there.
Changes were done in the agreement we did. When we did all the stuff for the construction.
You know, I'll need this, because maybe I would misunderstand, because I still have the understanding though from Stephanie that that it still needed to go back through the.
It went to the plan commission as far as a plat change, but it's been approved, and John Taylor from the county's involved with it, so you can find out.
So he said we're good, so we don't have to take.
He says.
Well, then I was that's great. No, maybe I was misinformed. I probably, I know that as you all got into doing that, Stephanie said that some of the way we had to do it changed, but I didn't realize we didn't have to come back to it. You're probably right.
Something comes to me, and I can't put it all together as to what we did last year, if I've ever March or whatever. Yeah, it's good. Then it'll be a lot easier.
I signed it, but I don't think I signed it. Did you get it? Yes.
All right. Oh, Jimmy, you can't escape.
What's that?
Did, Nancy Group have something from, my department told us yesterday?
Nancy would have passed along a lot of stuff yesterday. I don't remember.
Well, it just looks like on the subject of the fitness facility, that it's a very important plan, and that, having to go back to square one now, shows like, planning and almost a lack of desire to do anything about fitness options. And I, for one, am tired of paying twice for something that I've already paid for.
Well, I mean, I would disagree with those characterizations.
Well, that's the public assurance.
Okay.
Okay. And so I had people tell me, you know, or we've had discussions where that's what it looks like. And sometimes perception is reality. So,
I can tell you it's not in this case.
well, then something ought to happen. And, you know, you gotta communicate what's going on. I mean, I guess there was a meeting today.
And there were some encouraging things that came out of that meeting, but, I will hopefully know more this afternoon. But I'm reliant on others.
Well, it seems like there's a lot of he said, she said, reliant on others.
Like what?
Allegedly.
Like what? Let's clear that up. Like what?
Yeah, that's
Like what? Let's clear that up.
well, for a long time, there was you had maintained that we were waiting for, permitting and so forth, and paperwork.
Correct.
So I, went to the town and was informed that the town was waiting on you for doing certain things. And, you know, we're all the same people.
Well, let's
We're
I don't know. I want to clear all of this up right now.
Okay.
Okay? There are two parts to the town process. There's a site plan review process that is outsourced to the county. That's John Taylor. He maintains an office here at the town. And,
And the town partially pays his salary.
and the town partially pays his salary. And that was first. And that process was underway when we were saying there's a key meeting coming up with the town and so on and so forth. Once that occurred, then the building department, totally separate but with the town, had to approve the actual hookups to the building and all of those code requirements and things like that. John Taylor is like zoning and setbacks and so on and so forth. And we finished with John Taylor and then went to the town. Now, Vanguard, Modular, in their contract,
I heard that.
in their contract, they say that they will not apply for building permits, that the client has to. We tried to apply. The town's ordinance says that only contractors can apply for building permits. We had to work through that. We finally got that resolved. Then, the Vanguard Modular had to buy a business license. They did it. They had a paid receipt. The town had no record of it, even though Vanguard had a paid receipt. That was a 3-day delay. There's not a single, and then Vanguard's contract says, once the permits are in place and they've received a deposit, they will then come conduct a delivery whole site with 4 inches of crushed rock and so on and so forth, which would be impossible to get approved. We got the guy to come spend
out here.
half of last week with Vanguard. Got the guy to drive down here 6 hours a day for a 30-minute meeting. We had on site John Taylor, Bruce Spiker, and Will Connor, and tried to determine a way to get that facility on the site without cutting down half the trees. We think we came up with a solution, but then we had to, once we got it on the site, we had to find a place that complied with setbacks and buffers and so on and so forth. We think we agreed on something there. And they approved it in the field. Sound wonderfully cooperative on that. Vanguard delivers it, and then they have a different contractor that assembles it. Today, this afternoon, while he's driving 6 hours back to wherever he's come from, he's supposed to have conversations with the assembly team to see if they will agree to do it this different way that we came up with in the field. But to say that there's no desire to get it done, it just is not true at all. Wow. It's not true at all. Now, there are people who think that this is a total waste of money, and we are fighting those headwinds, but we've been working on it every day.
Well, it's just inconceivable to me that you have a contract with somebody to do something, and then when it comes around to actually performing the work, they come and say it can't be done.
No, they didn't say it can't be done. They said for us to deliver it, you have to do all of these additional things.
Well, where were
We
they
did-
6 months ago when you had the plan?
We didn't have a plan 6 months ago. We didn't get approval for this until the summer. There was not a-
You knew what, that some alternative had to be worked out.
No, there was never discussion of alternate fitness options until this summer. There was the assumption that, like most places, when they shut down for a renovation, that it's just going to be an inconvenience for a while. So this summer, I mean, this was an out-of-budget approval that the board gave this summer. So, you know, I'm sorry that it's been an inconvenience. I can promise you there's no one that would rather have this thing up and running.
I appreciate that sentiment. You know, and I just haven't,
And I think it's odd too, that they wouldn't come to the site, but they send you all the requirements for how you have to prepare the pad where it's gonna sit. They send you all that in advance, and you have to do all of that. But they specifically say that they will not send their advance team until you, under contract, have permits in hand and have paid a deposit. Now,
are they the only game in town?
there's one of them. There's Scotsman or something like that. And they have no trailers. They got wiped out by the storms.
Well, perhaps from a lessons learned standpoint, I mean, I'm sure the last thing you want to think about, the board wants to think about is renovations again to keep the facility, but perhaps as a lesson learned for planning for the future, that once there are going to be, you know that there's going to be a shutdown at some point in time, perhaps things like the fitness center, coming up with alternatives can be thought about earlier than it was addressed in this process.
Had there ever been any discussion about providing alternate fitness during closure, we would have started sooner. But there was not.
Well, but that's why
I mean,
I'm
even
saying.
2 years ago, when we went through the big amenities, there was
start the process early. Not that from what you've described, it necessarily would make any change in this, but
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with that.
Well, the proposal was to go down.
Craig wants to be going blind.
Yeah.
Looking at that.
Well, the sun,
The-
there's blinds
two
ordered for it, they
facilities.
just, like
Oh,
everything
yeah.
else, take forever to get here. They've been ordered like 3 weeks ago.
That
Wouldn't
the
you
second
think,
facility
Petra,
would be
maybe
built
the architect
without an interruption.
might have thought about recommending it?
No, I asked
No,
for it the
because
minute I
there was
stepped
the
into
same
this
council was
room.
gonna be
There was
first,
nothing in here but this open
and
room,
it
and I
was
said,
at the closed
that's gonna be a
renovations.
problem.
And it was a two-phase.
And David Burke goes, no, you don't need a blind there.
Well, the actual, the first one was on October, right?
Well, it was a total remake of Sandcastle plus the pools.
But it wasn't doing
Wendy.
anything.
Oh, yeah.
Wendy,
Yeah.
a little chilly in here for you?
No, actually, I'm comfortable and I'm always
My,
cold.
well,
It was,
So-
I mean, it was gonna run
I
it.
was
It
here
was,
yesterday,
it was
it was
gonna
68
take,
degrees.
take the
I'm
fitness
cool.
facilities
Even
away.
the
at some point.
thermostat said it was supposed to
But
be
I always
74.
had the impression that it's great to have.
It's all computerized.
New facilities.
And the computer doesn't get cold.
So we've been waiting for 3 weeks for them to come out.
When I listen to you talk, it sounds like
They wait, wait for that Ways and Means
Plans.
Committee meeting where they're
in terms of, moving this and getting this done, and the assumptions that you make, and your assumption, your expectation that.
If we ever have a Ways and Means Committee meeting.
And I think it's not just about fitness, I think it is about clubs and things like that, which you made lots of, headway on figuring out. And
Yeah,
that's-
Those were solvable.
The clubs were solvable.
I mean, we didn't even have a site for the trailer until probably August. And that was
your street, but, so you're thinking, okay, you didn't put those in,
Oh, I think one at a time, to keep it in office.
keep it.
Somebody's included in the
Somebody's paying for the,
Oh, for the electrical.
Yeah.
the electrical, for the usage.
So I think that's the way to track it, who's paying, if you're, like you suggested, getting
It's
the
on the
surcharge
bill.
on there. Keegan, how would Keegan know
Or,
being charged?
or is Windswept being charged for it?
I don't know, but I.
And Windswept two and Windswept three, all of those have lines.
Yeah, it's an extension cord, it's going into
Sort of
yours.
a, it's really sort of an interesting question. Okay, well, thank you. I will do further research. And Petra, if you want, do you wanna show, maybe you think you have something that shows what Berkeley? Oh, they're coming.
After executive
Oh,
session.
I'll
Yeah,
come
I
up
was gonna
another
say.
time.
Okay.
All
All right.
Take care. Thanks, Judy,
I,
for taking,
We'll hope
taking
to-
time to talk to us.
Sure. I will hope to have some good news as early as this afternoon. Okay.
It's not, I know it's not been easy for you and how difficult it's been trying to figure out how to handle all of these expectations that the community has upon it. And I do think that this has been just quite a process. I was not in tune with all those things until we started describing the amount of stuff that had to be done. And I think, as I've shared, I have shared some of that with the community because I think that Scott was accurate as he depicted it, that there is this disconnect.
And there may be, but I don't know how to put all of those things I just said in writing. I mean, I don't know how to do that. Right.
It is hard, and like I told you before, I'm glad to, when people talk with me, because obviously I've been kind of a champion of this. I've tried to share that litany of issues and things that we tried to do.
I mean, if it were up to me and there were no codes and so on and so forth, we would have emptied out that garage and set it up as a temporary gym, but can't do it. We would have just put up a tent with some heaters, but you can't do it.
I remember you talked about that as one of the first options.
Can you put store windows on Cinder Creek? Somebody suggested that, I said, I bet you they can, but.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you can do it from like a building code standpoint. gets me is saying there's no effort. I mean, and there have been headwinds from some people who don't think we should spend a nickel on this. And I have no less than a half a dozen staff doing something related to trying to make this happen every single day.
That's good to know,
And
because it's hard to see that from the
I
outside.
mean, we've even made arrangements with the company that provides our treadmills and so forth to do a trade with us, assuming we get this thing open, for smaller units that will fit through the door of the modular facility. So it's been a lot of work. You know, there are some people that don't care, but they're not me and my staff.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I'll pass that along.
You know, but at some point, I mean, if this latest Hail Mary, I would describe it as a Hail Mary. I think
It's a plan C or D.
I mean, if this doesn't work, we may be at waving the white flag time. I mean, because I don't.
Well, you know, if there is no alternative, then so be it. I think the problem is that there were some expectations, some communications as to what was going to happen, and so that created some expectations too. And now we're sitting in December where the thought was that there wouldn't be much of any downtime initially.
That was a hope for sure.
Yeah.
That was a hope. Because I should have followed my normal instinct, which is to under promise. But
You know what, I would hate for you to do that, because I think that takes away the hope, you know, that we can actually make things like this work. And so, I wouldn't want you to do that. I know the dilemma it puts you in when you can't deliver, or, you know, but I think in this case, as I said before, you know, the communication of it, the understanding what you've been through with it, and having people know that is a lot different. Telling him is helpful. I mean, I can tell him, but having you say that to him, I think is very helpful. He'll always tell his buddies.
Well, I mean, that's unfortunately how a lot of things on this island work. Is that people have their own networks, and I mean, you just look at the stuff on the Kiva list in terms of misinformation that gets out there. And, so to the extent that you use every avenue you can to get the right information and the correct information out there by whatever means necessary, whether that's talking to people, you know, the coffees, the newsletters, however it happens, more information is better than none.
Right? Even if we don't want to hear it. That's how I.
well, the easy answer would have been we give up.
Well, yeah.
That would have been the easy answer.
I felt maybe you were there last week. I wasn't sure.
I mean, I thought that the situation was somewhat hopeless last week, but, you know, we spent time, I mean, we've had to go out there and figure out ourselves how to back a 100-foot trailer down Beachwalker Drive in the middle of the night and get the Charleston County escort and all that kind of stuff, and we had to convince the people that we had a plan that might work, and
Well, I appreciate that extra effort here at the end too, when it would be, from your perspective, maybe some of the other people, easier to just walk away, but I think on behalf of the people that we're concerned about is that extra effort is really appreciated. I appreciate it.
well, if they agree to do this, I'm gonna have to figure out how to get sewer to the new location.
I was wondering about that, but I wasn't even willing
Well, why would they stay?
Uh-oh, somebody's watching again,
Ooh,
and you're on, please.
I turned his off and I turned mine. Any business license things, unless they would have something with Kika,
Mayor,
where they don't get right of encroachments, unless they don't show that business licenses.
Mayor. You're still live and there's someone watching.
Okay.
We're not live.
It's still cold in here. As soon as we get everybody back in here.
The air conditioner's on again and I don't, it's supposed to be heating, but it doesn't like us.
It's freezing in here. Did you guys turn
Yes,
the
ma'am.
heat off?
He's been working on it, but he hasn't been able to get the, come back out and fix it.
It didn't feel bad when we first came in here, but now it feels like.
Oh, the air conditioner?
Yeah, the air
The
conditioning.
sun has moved, so it's not feeding in and the people are gone.
Second, do we need a vote to come out of executive, or just to, okay?
Yeah, we need to make, I had a motion come out of executive session.
All right, do we have a motion to
So
come out?
moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, and, of course, as I indicated before we went into executive session, no decisions were made, no votes or actions were taken. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Anyhow, because you know, John, I met with him